Hello and welcome to my window to the world, the global crossroads. Ladies and gentlemen, this channel has been founded just about a week back. So we are an oven fresh channel. The purpose is to present before you, the discerning audience, the recent most happenings of the world and interpret it. The topic of the day is the resignation of British Premier Mr. Keir Starmer. Its political implications not only on Britain but on the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a country that once ruled over a quarter of the globe. A nation whose parliament became the model for democracies around the world. A nation that gave us Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, Clement Attlee, and generations of leaders who shaped the global history. Now imagine that same country preparing to swear in its sixth prime minister in just 7 years. Sixth prime minister in just 7 years. This is not a developing nation struggling with instability. This is the United Kingdom. And today, Britain stands at the another political crossroads, a political turmoil, as Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the man who only 2 years ago led the Labour Party to one of the biggest electoral victories in modern British history, has announced his resignation. The victory that was supposed to usher Britain in a new era that has ended in political disappointment. There was a lot of hope generated when Keir Starmer took over as the new prime minister, the sixth prime minister in the 7 years' time. People are hopeful that now, for good, Britain will have a stable government, Britain will have an effective government, Britain will have a government which will be progressive, and Britain will see an era of economic development. Britain will see an era where the issues like inflation and unemployment are the products of the bygone era. But this was not to happen. Today, Britain stands at yet another political crossroads, a turmoil where Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the man, as I stated earlier, who only 2 years back led the Labour Party to a historic win to capture the power and also the right to be the Prime Minister and rule the United Kingdom. The victory that was supposed to usher in a new era has ended in political disappointments. The promise has given way to frustration. The hope has turned into an uncertainty, and Britain once again finds itself searching for a new leader. But this story is not merely about Keir Starmer. It is not merely about Labour Party politics and its debacle. It is not even merely about Britain. It is much more than all these factors put together. This is a story, ladies and gentlemen, about a much larger crisis unfolding across the Western democratic world. A crisis of leadership, a crisis of vision, and perhaps most importantly, a crisis of public trust. Tonight we ask, why did Keir Starmer fail? Why are British voters increasingly angry? Why are traditional political parties losing support from the grassroots across the Europe? And what lessons should the countries like India draw from Britain's political turmoil? Let us begin. When Keir Starmer entered Downing Street in 2024, he appeared to be the answer to Britain's exhaustion. The country hoped that after a long time, the prime ministers changing in quick succession, here is a person, here is a government, here is a parliament which will steer Britain to the new peaks, new heights of glory and progress. After years of Brexit battles, economic turbulence, leadership scandals, and Conservative Party infighting, the British public wanted stability. They wanted that let there be a political party which offers them a stability which they were in a look for, because in 7 years, 6 prime ministers changed. They wanted competence. They wanted calm governance. No shouts, no screams, no declarations which were just made to win over the public opinion without much of a substance, without much of a will, without much of a backup, without much of a plan behind them. They wanted competence. Starmer promised exactly that. Starmer and his Labour Party won a landslide majority. Political commentators declared the beginning of a new era. The Conservatives were shattered. They paid for their infights and they paid for their lack of determination, and ultimately they lost confidence from the British voters. The Conservatives were shattered, therefore. The British electorate had spoken, or so it seemed. But politics is unforgiving. To predict politics on spontaneous reactions could not be more fatal than this. Winning power is one thing. Keeping public confidence is another. You may win power. The Labour Party came with a thumping majority, but then keeping public confidence is another. That is where precisely last 2 years, Labour failed to win over the confidence of the British voters. Within months, Starmer's government found itself trapped between competing expectations. You know, the expectations always are raised at the time of elections. The promises made without consideration of the resource kitty available. The promises made without consideration of they being real and implementable. Everybody wants to impress the voter, and in that race, the hopes are created. False promises at times are given. And ultimately, the expectations run very high. From the political right came accusations that he was failing to control illegal immigration. First issue. Right-wing politics getting stronger. The political rights blaming it upon Keir Starmer that he has failed to stop the infiltration of illegal migrants who are stealing away the jobs and opportunities from the British. The issue was becoming intense and intense. Small boats continued crossing the English Channel. Public concern about border security intensified. The issue dominated headlines. Every new arrival became a political controversy. Meanwhile, from the political left came criticism over economic policies. They had to answer their right-wing political rivals. So they started talking about economic policies. Many labor supporters expected sweeping reforms, as might have been a kind of hope created during the electoral campaigns. Many labor supporters expected, therefore, sweeping reforms. Instead, they often saw caution and compromise. It is one thing to roll out the promises when you are not in power, when you are not responsible, when you do not know what you are talking about at times. And it is another thing that you are placed to govern the country in that responsible position. You form the government, and then it is your turn now to cater to those raised expectations and provide what you promised or what were expectations of your voter base. Therefore, many labor supporters themselves started creating noise for their own party. At the same time, from the political right came another allegation that Keir Starmer was a failure in controlling the allegation regarding illegal migration, illegal entry of the people who are coming through English Channel, boatloads of people getting into England and creating issues right from resettlement to employment, and right from the government benefits to the taxing infrastructure. The right-wing party encashed upon this. They said that the boats which are continued crossing the English Channel, it was a time that a public concern is raised about border security. This must be intensified. The issue dominated headlines. This became a major issue. So first, unexpected delivery of the promises which created expectations. And then next, the border security. Boatloads of people coming through English Channel and other places, getting into England and creating problems. The right-wing parties linked them with so many other things, including the internal security, and squarely blamed the Keir Starmer government for the failure of checking this kind of illegal immigration. That was the second issue. Every new arrival became a political controversy. Meanwhile, from the political left came criticism over economic policies. They also had to make some noise to sort of quieten their opposition. Many labor supporters expected sweeping reforms, as I told you earlier. Instead, they often saw caution and compromise. Some accused Starmer of abandoning labor's traditionally social democratic roots. They said he is deviating from, this is not the philosophy of the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer was deviating from the basic tenets, basic philosophy of the Labour. Many Labour supporters expected sweeping reforms. They wanted better pay packages, better working conditions, other benefits. Nothing was to come by. Because the ruling government, and obviously so, because they have to deliver everything, they will weigh now. And in Britain, the bureaucracy also plays his role, if you've seen the Yes Minister. So, instead, they often saw caution and compromise, that the Starmer government was extraordinarily careful, cautious. Some accused Starmer of abandoning Labour's traditional social democratic roots, as I told you. Others argued that he lacked ideological convictions altogether. The sweeping allegation that Keir Starmer lacks the total conviction to implement the Labour philosophy, the policies which are driven by the core philosophies of the Labour Party. And then there was a third criticism. So first, about the policies not being so liberal as expected, labor-centric. Second, illegal immigration was not being prevented. And now comes the third criticism. There was a third criticism. One that cut across political lines. Many voters simply felt uninspired. They saw competence, but they did not see vision. They said, all right, Starmer has the competence. He's competent to govern. But he has no vision. What's the use? He doesn't commit himself aggressively to the Labour Party philosophies. So he has no vision. They saw management, but they did not see leadership. In politics, perceptions can become a reality. And India must listen to this. Perception becomes a reality. It is not that justice is done. The justice must appear to be, or justice must appear to have been done also. And gradually, Starmer acquired a reputation that every leader fears. What reputation? A reputation for being ordinary at a prime time when voters were demanding extraordinary solutions. He failed to deliver those solutions. So he became ordinary at a prime time requirement when the voters were expecting some extraordinary solutions and initiatives to come from Starmer. This was the third failure. The warning signs grew louder, and louder. Inflation pressures persisted. Economic growth remained sluggish. Public services continued struggling. The National Health Service faced immense strain. There is no sufficient budget, no efficiency for the NHS program, which is one of the most popular programs in Britain as far as health care is concerned. Housing affordability remained a challenge, and public dissatisfaction deepened. Then came the devastating local elections. This was the last straw on the camel's neck. The local elections After these first three reasons, which I have counted for you, the last straw on the camel's neck came from, last straw on the camel's back came from the results of the local elections. Labour lost more than 1,400 council seats across England. This was en masse treated to be a vote against Labour. The party also lost control of Wales, a political stronghold that Labour had dominated for generations. That went out of their hands. The message from voters was unmistakable. The honeymoon was over. No more Labour can claim any sympathy, can claim any support from, by and large, across the party line, the voters. So the honeymoon was over. Inside Labour ranks, nervousness turned into panic, obviously, because they even when you lose a province like Wales, which was held by Labour generations through, it is bound to cause panic, it is bound to cause nervousness. Members of Parliament began asking a dangerous question. Can Keir Starmer actually win the next general election? So after the fourth step comes the fifth blow. Fifth is a terrible blow. The members of Parliament of UK raising a question: can Keir Starmer win the next Parliament elections? The answer increasingly appeared to be no. The answer increasingly appeared to be no, that he cannot. And politics is ruthless towards leaders perceived as electoral liabilities. So far, so a leader wins the elections, the followers flock around him. The day the party workers, the party leadership, and the people who are sympathetic to the party feel concerned that this fellow is a liability to the party, they start deserting him. That is what happened with Keir Starmer. The question asked was whether he can win next parliament election. Answer increasingly was a big no. What transformed concern into rebellion was the dramatic return of Andy Burnham, and then returns the point around which the precipitation is going to take place in that supersaturated liquid. The name, which sounds now like a warning bell, like a tornado to Keir Starmer. Of course, he has now resigned as the premier, but the rebellion was built around Andy Burnham. Formerly mayor of Greater Manchester, Burnham won a parliamentary by-election in a convincing fashion. He won the by-election. More importantly, he defeated the rapidly rising Reform UK challenge. Reform UK challenge. That is, more importantly, he defeated the rapidly rising Reform UK challenge. That victory electrified labor activities and labor activists as well. Suddenly, they saw a politician who appeared capable of connecting with voters in ways Starmer could not. So Starmer was losing control. He could not connect with the voters. And that could always be a fatal for any political leader. A politician with stronger grassroots appeal. A politician with a stronger grassroots appeal. That was Andy Burnham I'm talking about. That victory electrified labor activists. Suddenly, they saw a politician who appeared capable of connecting with voters in ways the Starmer could not. A politician with stronger grassroots appeal, a politician who can potentially stop the rise of populist forces, a politician who looked like a winner. And in politics, winners attract followers. That's very, very clear. You remember that it is what once upon a time, Second World War time slogan, which the famous general of which who was a hero of Second World War says that no bloody bastard can win the war by dying for his country. A bloody bastard can win the war by making others to die for his country. So a leader who not only attracts the followers from his own fold, but is able to attract more and more from the other side, ultimately leads the crowd. And that is what Burnham was doing. A politician who looked like a winner. And in politics, winners attract followers, as I was telling you. As Burnham's influence grew, Starmer's authority weakened. The contrast became impossible to ignore. One man appeared to embody momentum. The other appeared trapped in decline. That one man who appeared to be embodying the confidence or momentum was the new leader which was emerging, formerly mayor of Greater Manchester, Mr. Burnham. While Keir Starmer were losing the appeal. The other appeared trapped in decline. Starmer were trapped in decline. The descent has begun. Eventually, pressure became overwhelming. Today, standing outside number 10 Downing Street, Starmer acknowledged the reality when he said, "The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election." He made a very frank confession that my party is asking me whether I'm able to lead them or whether I'm going to be able to lead them victorious in the next general election. His answer was simple. He said no. The parliamentary party had made its judgment, and Starmer chose resignation over prolonged conflict. In one of the most emotional moments of his political career, he thanked his wife, Victoria. His voice broke. His composure briefly vanished. This doesn't happen so easily with the politicians at the level of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, who had spent years navigating political storms, became, for a moment, simply a husband and a father. He was no more a leader now. That is what his party said. He was not capable of winning them the elections, and therefore he was of no use. This is precisely the lesson for every politician. You can and you shall be followed. You shall be flocked around till such moment your voters feel that you are a winner. You can deliver. You can deliver victory at the elections. If you look at India, Mr. Narendra Modi is an ideal example. Of course, there are controversies, but even with that, Mr. Narendra Modi is an example. Perhaps, maybe, similarly, Rahul Gandhi, though far behind maybe, but is emerging very fast. Politics often appears brutal from the outside. No, it is brutal always. It's not appearing brutal from the outside. Politics is brutal. It doesn't have any mercy for a person who is not capable of winning elections. Moments like these remind us that behind every leader stands human being. After all, Starmer also is a human being. After all, Churchill also was a human being who was a hero of Second World War and ousted by the UK voters. Only one slogan: cheer Churchill, vote Labour. And Churchill and his party went out down in the dustbin. But Starmer's resignation marks the end of one political chapter, it raises far bigger questions. It's not an end of a chapter. I don't believe so. It raises so many other questions. It is, on the contrary, more problematic than before Starmer. But while Starmer's resignation marks the end of one political chapter, it raises far bigger questions. Why is Britain changing prime ministers so frequently? Britain and British democracy is talked about very highly. So what has gone wrong with it? A system which gave prime ministers like Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, Clement Attlee, what has gone wrong with it? What has gone wrong with it? Why it is cracking now? What is the problem? But while Starmer's resignation marks the end of one political chapter, it raises far bigger question therefore. Why is Britain changing prime ministers so frequently? David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer, and now potentially Andy Burnham. 6 leaders in 7 years for a democracy on which number of constitutions and parliaments model code of conduct are modeled. Indian Parliament and the proceedings thereof follows Westminster model. Why then this? Count them. Start from David Cameron. 1, Theresa May. 2, Boris Johnson. 3, Rishi Sunak. 4, Liz Truss. 5, and Keir Starmer. 6, and maybe now Andy Burnham. 6 leaders in 7 years. The 7th in waiting, and there is no guarantee that he will complete his term as well. This level of turnover would once have been associated with unstable democracy. So is Britain an unstable democracy? Today, it is happening in one of the world's oldest parliamentary systems. The reason lies deeper than individual personalities. That is what I believe. The old political consensus that governed Britain for decades is collapsing. Globalization created winners and losers. Mass immigration transformed social debates. Economic inequality widened. Trust in institutions declined. Traditional political parties struggled to adapt. The result is permanently restless electorate, always in a hope to achieve something, experimenting with this, that, or the other one. But no alternative serves him right. Voters are increasingly willing to punish incumbents. Patience has become scarce. They want immediate results. Public expectations have become immense. Political careers have become shorter. This is not only Britain's story, it is happening across Europe. It is happening in North America. It is happening throughout much of the democratic world. Citizens are demanding results faster than governments can realistically deliver. And social media amplifies every disappointment. That is an easy fuel to be fed to the fire. So social media amplifies every disappointment. Every controversy becomes existential. What does it mean? Every controversy becomes existential, the reason d'etre for existence. Every election becomes a referendum on frustration itself. The rise of reform UK reflects this phenomenon. Just as populist movements have surged in France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United States, Britain too is witnessing a political realignment. The old center is shrinking. The extremes are growing. The political map is being redrawn. And that may be the most important lesson from Starmer's downfall. The issue is not merely whether one leader succeeded or failed. The issue is whether traditional democratic institutions can adapt quickly enough to meet the expectations of an increasingly becoming impatient age voter. As Britain begins another leadership contest, uncertainty looms large on the horizon. Will Andy Barham become Prime Minister? Will Labour recover? Will Reform UK continue its rise? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a far deeper transformation in British politics? Only time will tell. It will be too early to predict anything. But one thing is very clear, ladies and gentlemen. The resignation of Keir Starmer is not just another political event. It is another warning signal from the heart of the Western democratic world, a signal that voters are restless, a signal that old political formulae are failing, and a signal that the search for leadership, credibility, and public trust has become the defining challenge of our time. The next Prime Minister of Britain will inherit not merely an office. He will not be inheriting only the office of the Prime Minister. He will inherit a crisis, and the world will be watching. The British voters will be watching. And as it goes, the globalization might become, through the social media, a vehicle for paddling or rather shooting what Britain is facing today to other countries as well. Maybe in Europe, or maybe America, or maybe India. One doesn't know. Are the days of benevolent democracies which promised certain things to the voters, sincerely tried to fulfill them and failed? Will it matter? Are you not throwing away the baby with the bathwater? The democratic apparatus itself, as Keir Starmer's resignation speaks loud and clear, is a major thud. It's a major shock. It's an earthquake or a tsunami that is happening to basics of the democratic structure of the governance. Would you agree with me? Leave the answer to you. It was nice talking to you. Hope sooner than the later Britain will have a new prime minister. Thank you very much for being with me.